That looks centered, right? I think.
Your theme's going.
You can't talk during that. You cannot talk during that. We welcome you today. We wanted to talk to you about happiness today and cultivating happiness and how not to bring happiness to your life and how to bring happiness to your life. One of the things that we've noticed a lot lately with people having deaths in their families, there's a lot of fighting over money and what's been left, and we see it a lot. That what's interesting is the people that are fighting and going on Facebook and saying horrible things about the people, saying they're all they care about is money or whatever, are usually the people that all they care about is money. And the people who care about relationships and just trying to divide up everything well and all that kind of stuff end up usually with less because they care more about relationships. And in the long run, relationships are what bring you happiness. And so we are here today to talk about that strange dynamic between happiness and money, and just finding happiness in general and what really brings you happiness. And can money do it? There is this strange dynamic. And so our question for you today is, are you trading money for happiness? And if you are, just know down the line, it's not going to bring you what you thought. The best relationships, the best things in life are what bring you happiness. I have Dr. Slaughter here to help me today. Hi, Jim.
Hey, and thanks for having me today. I appreciate it. And happiness is such an elusive thing for a lot of people. We all want to be happy, but we run into a lot of people who aren't very happy, and
we do.
So we're going to talk a little bit about that. And some people have different ideas about what makes them or what should make them happy, but often they don't work for them.
Well, and I came from a big family, and I think that big families often are happier because they learn when they're young. I learned when I was young the importance of relationships. And if you're in the house and you're fighting, your parents make you get along, and you learn because the parents are outnumbered, you learn how to help each other out and help with each kid and help with the stuff and help and become a community as a family. And you learn really how to value relationships over money. Now, I grew up in a very affluent neighborhood, and I've had people say, "Oh, Ann was poor when she was little," and I'm like, "What?" My kids see the pictures. They go to the house, and they're like, "Wait, people, some of our family were saying you were poor," and I'm like, "Well, what they mean is there were so many kids, they just, thought that because we live very simply, and that's what I grew up. Even though I was in a very nice area, we lived very simply. My parents taught us how to use your money as well as you can to get all the best things in life and to live very simply." And so I think for us, we observe people who go after money and lose their family, lose their loved ones, lose their friends, and they end up regretting that. And we see it happen a lot, especially with family. Anytime someone dies, when they start fighting, and it doesn't matter how much money there is. It doesn't matter. They fight over anything. Would you say that?
Yeah, the thing is not just money in the bank or in accounts and things like that people get greedy about. It has to do with personal items, and I think there are times when depending on what people see as necessary to bring them happiness, and often it's money or it's things, it's whatever. Money buys a lot of things if you have it, but it doesn't buy contentment or happiness, and yet some people are convinced that it does, and they're willing to hurt other people
To get it.
in order to get it.
Yeah.
And guess what? When they get it, and all these people are hurt and they walk away, the person's still not happy.
Yeah, and it usually, if you look on Facebook, people tend to be ugly and say horrible things about people, even their family members. They tend to continue saying horrible things about those people they say are ripping them off or whatever. When if you look back through their Facebook feed, you'll see that they're the ones who treat people horribly. And they're the ones that aren't the honest people. And so getting into, and I advise all my clients, don't get into the Facebook or social media wars on there. It doesn't do any good. Just leave them alone. And so at this point, when we look at the research, we were looking at the research about money. It does say that there's a certain amount of money. Okay, so when we talk about a myth, all the myths about happiness, the number one myth is money will make you happy.
Right.
And that is a myth. It's stressful, yes, when you're worried about money. And so some of the research, and there's an article in Psychology Today, that I think it was like 5 years ago it came out, that they had done research. There's a certain amount that does improve your happiness. And that is as if you can have enough for food to cover your basic needs like food, shelter, and clothing. But once you have enough money to be comfortable, getting more money isn't going to make any difference in how happy you are. In fact, they show that the more money you get after that, and there was an amount, was it like 75,000 5 years ago?
That was the amount they mentioned.
Yeah, that it's about 75,000 for you to be able to do that and be happy. But after 75,000, the value of your money starts going down for happiness.
Right, and I would have put, the thing is about being comfortable, that term bothers me a little bit because it depends on how you define that, right?
Yeah.
And so you and I talked a lot more, and we'll bring it up later, but a lot of the issue has to do with how I take care of my money, how I handle the money that I do have.
Yeah.
And so, it's not so much out as how I handle it.
Right.
And so my comfort level depends on, it does depend to an extent on that my bills are paid, I can buy food for my family and that kind of thing, those are the essentials, right?
Right.
And so once those are fairly well in place, then we begin to relax a little bit and we're less stressed. But the problem is that often people don't want just that. Their comfort level rises, depending on the level of income that they have, and often people want more.
Well, and you just change who you compare yourself to. So you change your social status, so it actually changes your social comparisons. So therefore, you're still not happy because you're comparing yourself to people around you. Mm-hmm. And you still want to achieve more and more. And it really is interesting that I let my kids know that because they had some money coming in from death. And they got a little bit, and I talked to them, and of course they immediately put it away, invested it and all that. So they're still living the way they would have lived before. It's so important when you get money. Now, another family member got a lot more than them, over $1 million, and you would think she got nothing. Right, because she's still doing what people do when they're fighting for money. And I think it's so important that you don't get into the vices this is why they're saying money starts devaluing your happiness, because you can get into the vices of things you can buy when you have money. And that is what you have to be careful about. We've seen it destroy so many people. And the statistics show that almost all lottery winners have a very small window of time when they're happier, and it's often not even a year. Within 5 years, they've lost all of it.
Usually, yes.
Almost all of them. And so it's interesting when you look at that, because they get into the vices. They start buying things. They start doing things that they think, because they're inhibitions, things that would have kept them from doing it before. They think because they're wealthy, they should be able to do these things. Now, often you can get into alcohol. You can hire women. You can do all these things. Drugs, there's lots of, you look at what they call the elites, the things they're doing now. They're just horrible things that you can get into. Gambling, but you just lose it all in the long run. Whether you lose your family, your loved ones, or all your money, the value of happiness clearly goes down, 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 down than before you had the money. Or it changes nothing. And the research shows that 75% of the time, it changes nothing. As far as happiness level at all, and that 25% is for a very short window.
And that's a very interesting statistic. That's interesting research, that because it's the idea that money and the accumulation of money will make me happy. or happier, that it will change my whole outlook on life, that everything will be great forever. That is so prevalent. And so it pushes people from the inside, almost pushes and pushes and pushes to go to the next level. And so often we're willing, people, not we, he and I, but there are people who are willing to put their families on the shelf, their kids, their spouse, whatever, and just go after more and more money. And if there's something that is a little, what would you say, off color, a little immoral, illegal, or whatever with that, that's okay. I just need more money.
Well, and it's interesting. I had people tell me that when they wanted $10,000 in the account. When they got $10,000, he said it didn't work. I just wanted $20,000. When I got $20,000, it didn't work. I just wanted $30,000 in there. And it is weird. I tell people once it's in your account, you're not going to feel that. It's weird. There's a relief. It's more the anticipation of what you could do with it. But it is interesting that the research shows that human beings are quick to adapt to new circumstances, a quality that has helped us survive and thrive. But it also means that the positive things that initially make us happier soon become our new normal, and we return to our old baseline of happiness. However, researchers in the field of positive psychology have found that you can genuinely increase your happiness and overall satisfaction with life, and it doesn't require winning a lottery ticket, and without making any drastic changes in your life. What it takes is an interchange of perspective and an attitude. And that's truly good news, because that's something anyone can do. And that's what we want to help you with.
Yeah, and we work on that all the time. That's a part of what we do in helping people. And, honestly, a part of that has been to get a grip on our own ideas, our own philosophy of life, and that kind of thing. And so, we've tried to develop that and speak from something that we know about, right?
Yes.
And so, we're sharing part of what we've discovered on our journey, on our path.
Yes.
And but also that's exactly right. We run into a lot of people who are struggling in this area. Money has not been their friend, and yet they really sought more and more and more and more of it. So yeah.
Yeah, and I think that what's important, and one of the things I've really encouraged my family members, and they've encouraged me always, is to not ruin relationships at all for money. And even things that you value, like we had this horse that we valued so much. It was the greatest horse. And so, do you sell the horse to have some money, or is the horse bringing you more value by keeping it? Always evaluating that. Just money itself is just paper. It's until you think you can buy things to make you happy. You cannot do that. You can't. I wish you could. I wish you could, because that would be a really simple thing to do. And unfortunately, money can corrupt completely. And that's where you have to be careful. You've got to understand the power of that and be very careful how you move forward in your life. And that's where your values are so important. So we want to show you today what are the most important things when it comes to being happy and getting happy. Now, 2 weeks ago on the show, we did a whole segment on things that you can do to be happier. Just daily things in your life you can do. So we just encourage you to go back to a couple weeks ago, September 1st, I think it was, early in September, and you can see that. So you can go to Getting Better with Ann Beal on Facebook or Ann Beal on YouTube. Dr. Slaughter has them on his Facebook and his as well. But if you even just Google us and find us, but you can also hear us on 1160 a.m. every Saturday at 12, or on TuneIn, which is KBDT, or you can go to BigDTalk.com every week and hear us if you're out of state. So we just encourage you to do that. Now we're going to go over the myths about happiness. Which one is your favorite aside from the money one?
Well, I guess the one that intrigues me most is the myth that to be happy you got to be in a relationship.
Oh yeah, so that's the other thing single people struggle with is
right.
they don't feel complete, or they feel like they have to have somebody.
Right, and when it says that myth has to do with more of a romantic relationship, significant other, that kind of relationship, and honestly, that is just not true. There are other ways that we develop happiness through relationships. That's not to say that relationships aren't important, because they're critical.
Well, and I think when we talk about romantic relationships, yes, in fact, they've done research to show that singles are happier than people who are in relationships with a partner that is stressful. Like it's just not a good match.
Right.
And those are the worst thing to do. So singles don't end up having to go through that. But we just want to encourage you, because being in a healthy, supportive love relationship does contribute to happiness, but it doesn't have to be a romantic relationship. What contributes to happiness is having loved ones that you cherish around you, lots of friends and you know, relatives and things like that. If you have all that and you have your job and things like that we can talk about, that is what truly brings happiness, not necessarily a romantic relationship. And there's lots of people that are meant to be single. So we're going to talk about that when we get back, what happiness really is. Stay right here. Okay. So when I get back, or so when we come back in, I'm going to do this.
Okay.
This is freaking me out a little bit. What's happening here? There we go. Okay.
What happened there?
Oh, it's going. It just had a thing on the screen making it look like it was, you know, just, I don't know what they saw. I don't know. I doubt it showed that. So, right now, we have 3,887 people on there. That's cool. Okay, here we go. All right. So from there, do you want to, so this is what I want to ask you, because I know this is, you wanted to talk about the myths, and I wanted to go to, see, you can see yourself well. So I was afraid you couldn't see yourself.
Much better.
Yeah.
Assuming that's a good thing.
Here's your tips. I'm going to leave these for you, because these are your tips. Right? Okay.
And there are certain ones of those that stand out to me.
There you go. This one. So after I played that, but this is the key. How do I get that to, oh, got it. I hate to have to use this, but I do. Seems so archaic now to have a CD player. But I really wanted to play him because I love Tom Dooley.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't know if you guys know who Tom Dooley is. He passed away like 2010.
I think so, yeah.
He was, actually his real name is George, but he went by Tom Dooley.
Yeah.
And his show was The Journey. And he had this show every day, and it was an encouraging show. It was a godly show, and it just told stories. So we love stories. So we decided to start sharing stories, either from our listeners or from other people, about the topic, because everyone loves stories. And one of our favorite radio shows are these old classic
Yes.
shows, right, that are stories. And so they're very, it's funny what you find during all this quarantining. We found some really wonderful stuff that way. And so we want to play Tom Dooley. So he's going to talk about money, but he has these wonderful, they're called Gems for the Journey.
Yeah.
From the Journey. Gems from the Journey or for the Journey?
Gems for the Journey.
G-E-M-E-S.
G-E-M-S, yeah. And, you and I had enjoyed, you actually put me on to that, to him and what he had contributed, And so we began listening to that, and we didn't have a whole set of his material, and so we contacted his family.
Yeah.
And we were in touch with his family. It was so nice to get to know them on, just even if it was only on the phone. But we talked to them, and we made arrangements to receive a whole set of CDs that had some of his material on there. It's the most wonderful devotional material.
Yes, and I think that he just did so much for me. I listened to him every day going into work at the Mentor Clinic. I listened to him on the way to grad school and all the time. And so when he passed away like at 63, and it was kind of a shock. He'd had cancer.
Yeah, that's really young,
so
boy, I tell you. I hated to hear that.
They had the funeral in North Richland Hills, and so right near here, he was here. He was not very far in Hearst, right? His show.
No, he was close by, I guess,
So we just, we'll play that. And then, I like that when they talk about, here we go.
When everything isn't enough, then what do you do? We're striving for more and more and more. We think somebody else has more than we, and we finally have to admit that, hey, we sort of got it all. What do you do then? It was George Bernard Shaw who said, there are two tragedies in life. One is not to get your heart's desire. The other is to get it. Often the things we most desire in life are least able to bring true satisfaction. We climb the ladder of success only to discover that it's leaning against the wrong wall. An ancient Greek fable tells of a king named Midas. You remember Midas. You've heard it, the Midas touch. Midas had more gold than anyone in the world, yet he was not satisfied. He became obsessed with the acquisition of more and more gold, and he was most happy when he entered the palace vault to count what he possessed. The only thing he loved more than gold was his young daughter, Marigold. One day, King Midas encountered a mysterious stranger who gave him the power to turn everything he touched into gold. Hence the term, the Midas touch. Well, this made the king quite happy. And King Midas went through the palace transforming objects into gold. Midas decided to read a book. But when he touched the edge of the cover, the book became gold. I can't read now, he said. Oh, but it's still much better to have a gold book than a book I can read. Much better. When breakfast arrived, Midas reached for a piece of fresh fruit. But when he picked up the fruit, it became, yes, a lump of gold. The same happened to his glass of water. What shall I do, he asked. I'm hungry and thirsty, yet cannot eat or drink. Just then Marigold came into the room with tears streaming down her cheeks. She reached out for a comforting embrace from her father, and he instinctively kissed her. To his horror, she suddenly turned into a little gold statue. King Midas screamed in anguish as he realized what he had done to the person he loved more than life itself. Suddenly the stranger reappeared. Are you happy, King Midas? He asked. Oh, how could I be happy? Asked the king. I'm the most miserable man alive. But you have the golden touch, said the stranger. What more could you want? King Midas became silent in his shame. Please, pleaded the king, give me back my precious Marigold, and I will give up all the gold I have. I have lost all that's worth having. You are wiser than you were, said the stranger. After instructing the king on how to reverse his golden touch, the stranger once again vanished. King Midas did as the stranger had instructed, and his daughter returned to life. With great joy, he embraced his little girl. Never again did King Midas seek more gold, except the golden rays of the sun and little Marigold's hair. Well, one of the most difficult things to master in life is establishing and maintaining proper priorities. King Midas learned his lesson the hard way. The most important things in life were taken from him as a direct consequence of his lopsided priorities. By allowing gold to become his overriding passion on what truly matters in life. All of us are guilty of King Midas' error. Although we may not look to gold to bring us joy, we do fall into the same pattern of lopsided priorities. We deceive ourselves into believing that we need something more than our current lot in order to attain happiness. Some may look for wealth, fame, others status, material possessions, or countless other desires that they hope will magically bring fulfillment in life. Some people who have learned that material goods do not bring lasting happiness look for their ultimate satisfaction in a human relationship, a best friend, a mate, or children. While they pursue these things, they lose sight of what really matters. Two problems are associated with poorly placed priorities. The first is that the pursuit of future goals can rob us of present fulfillment. We're always looking around the next corner and over the next hill to find satisfaction that we never fully attain. Having everything we desire is not the key to fulfillment. Rather, finding fulfillment in life is the key to enjoying what we have. It's called contentment.
Contentment. That is so good.
Yeah, that's a great word to use, and I often will tend to substitute that word for happiness, although they're not equal, they're not the same. Contentment is a rest and easiness that we have regarding where we are, and what we have. And that's what most people shoot for, whether they realize it or not.
And that's where contentment doesn't come from getting more. Contentment comes from being happy with what you have. And that's where when they say 75% of how you see things determines, 75% of happiness is based on how you see things, your perspective change. And so that is why if you really want to be happy, there are simple things that you can do to be happy, whereas to attain money and keep attaining money, what you'll do one day is wake up and your life will be gone and you'll be old and you'll be like, I just let it pass away and I didn't focus on my priorities. And that's what we want to help you with in the next segment, is keeping those priorities straight. So stay right here. So, Julie. Hi, Julie. So good to have you on. That was really good. I could have played the music, but I thought we might want to add something before we closed. But I love that so much.
Yeah,
I love
great.
him so
That's
much.
great.
So if we look at the link between money and happiness, when we talked about that the amount you get starts causing after 75,000 or maybe even 100,000 now, that the value of it starts going down. But I do think it's important that people now, with all the fears that they have and the stress that they have, that there is a certain amount of money they need to relieve that stress. Don't you agree?
What do you mean? What would
Well,
they need to, what stress would they
I mean,
need
they're
to
afraid of
relieve?
losing their jobs. So let's say they're afraid of losing their jobs. Then having money in the bank is very important, which is why Dave Ramsey talks about having 3 to 6 months. We worked on having 6 months of income in the account in case some emergency happens. Okay. So what I see with people is that money is dwindling. Like they've had it. If they planned ahead, if they didn't plan ahead, you can see what they need. If they planned ahead, then they have it dwindling. And we have people that we see that did both. And so the ones who didn't plan ahead, thank goodness they have unemployment. But I think the reality is there is a certain amount, and that's where it's like shelter, food, your bills paid, things like that.
Sure.
That take that stress away.
Right. Well, I think that's the issue, and maybe that's why they chose 75,000, because that seemed to be these days maybe the level where
That was 5 years ago. So things have
that
changed.
people could maintain some degree of comfort in their living. What it costs to live, and so
Well, but what that research also showed was after that, whatever that amount is, it going up in the money does not improve your overall well-being and happiness.
And I wonder.
But
go ahead.
It does say that if you use that money to buy time, that it does, if you use it that way. And that's where, instead of using it to have some vices that make you sick or do things that make you lose your family or anything like that, if you use it to pay for someone to clean your house, if that gives you time, or do the yard, that gives you time for you, or babysit, so you get some free time. There are ways to buy time that way. By us having other counselors and people on staff, it gives us the ability to have time. Right? And so we pay them so that we have time, or our assistant we pay that we have time. And so when you're buying time, and the research, it says time only is the only thing that made the difference after a certain amount.
Yeah, I think when we have more money on hand, we get more money, make more money, and we buy more things with it. We get to a point, and I don't think it's that far after that, but we get to a point where there's this emptiness kind of sets in, because we realize that what we bought, whatever it might be, bigger, better, whatever, is kind of wearing off. That whatever jolt, whatever high I got from that, whatever it was I bought, is it's wearing really thin. And so I have two options. I can either deal with my money in a different way, or I can go buy more stuff.
Thank you. we were talking on break about a study by the Proceedings of the National Academy of Science that came out in 2017. They did all this research and showed that the growing body of evidence demonstrates that the only way you can buy happiness really after what we say like 75,000 was the amount, so you can have your basic needs met like shelter, food, all that kind of stuff. That way you don't reap any emotional benefits just by higher salaries, because you just change your social status. You just change what you're comparing yourself to. And so, or you move to another area and then you're comparing yourself to that social status, or there's an economic status around you, just keep comparing and comparing and comparing. And so, but it does say that you can buy, the growing body of evidence demonstrates you can buy happiness essential by buying time.
Yes, and
Yes.
That's something people forget. But now we realize many people would say that time is more valuable to most people than money. We spend money to get time.
Yes, and people work to get money, and then they use all their money to repair their health or get time with the people they alienated, or grandkids because they didn't get time with their kids. I mean, you do learn. So we're trying to help you learn before you do it.
Right.
But the business professor at Harvard University, Miss Willens, who actually worked on this study, said there are ways, if you learn how to navigate trade-offs, okay? But with people, number one, relationships are very important, they said. But with money, the one thing you can buy is learning the trade-off with time.
Right.
That if you use your money for time. And I thought that was very interesting. So they used 6,200 adults living in the United States, Canada, Denmark, and the Netherlands. And the data showed that people who chose to spend their money on time-saving services such as meal delivery, a house cleaner, or a lawn service, things like that, reported greater life satisfaction compared to those who didn't. Now, how did they do that? Well, what they did was they just gave people money, okay? They gave them money every week for the months they were doing this study, and they found that there were two types of people. People who just bought things, like, a new PlayStation, a new iPhone, and then people who used their money to buy time. So they paid a babysitter, they paid a cleaner, or they,
Yard service.
took a trip with their loved ones, but they took time, okay? So when they did that, they showed that those people when they did all the results, they said at the end of the day, they asked the participants how much time they saved or what they purchased and how they felt with their mood. And they reported that participants who spent their money on time-saving purchases were 67.5% less stressed and reported higher levels of well-being compared to those who purchased material items.
Yeah.
Now that's a big percentage.
It's huge. And you can just see that there's a lot of relief in buying yourself time.
Yeah.
There's a lot more stress that comes from just buying more things. So yeah, that's interesting, isn't it?
Yes, and I do have some people who gripe that these young kids are making like $100,000 and they're making all this money and they just get paid too much. But I tell them, I said, you just don't realize now that they're paying very high rent, okay? And so the price of living is really high. So it's not like what you would think a long time ago making $100,000.
$30,000 student loans.
Yeah.
All kinds of things like that.
And so they have this term called, are you a Henry, a high earner but not rich yet? And so there are an awful lot of Henrys out there, right?
Yeah.
So one of the most important things it says is to be careful. It's not when you start being able to get money and you can make money, the most important thing is to be the most careful how you spend it.
Right.
And that you want to save as much as you can and still have an enjoyment. Now, my parents, I tell you, my family, I'm just so grateful for them. My grandma, too. One of the things they always told me when I got my first job was to put 80% away, give away 10% to charity or, tithe, and then...
live on the rest.
Yeah. Live on. They told me that they didn't tell me to put 80% away. They told me to put 10% in savings, tithe 10%, and then live on the 80%. And so I started doing that. I thought everybody did that. So I took 10% of right off the top on my salary when I got hired by EDS with General Motors. I took 10% out and put it in savings. because they had you fill out those forms before you start working. I had no idea how that would come out in my check, but I started getting my check, and I just lived. I mean, I just thought that's what everyone did. And so there was a point after the first year when we got our investment statements delivered to our desk at work. And then everybody was like, what? None of them had, all of them had not put anything in. We were all out of college, and it had been our first year working. There were like 20 of us. And then they were like, they said, we thought you were poor. They were putting money in my desk. So they thought maybe I got paid less. They were, like, if we were out, I'd just get coffee and they'd buy me food. They're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you were doing that. And so I just learned to do that, right? To make sure and save some. And we're not saying save all, but you want to save so that you have something to show for that.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, and that was a wise thing that even though you didn't know that it was wise at the time, that was a very wise thing. It worked out really well for you. And I think a lot of people believe it's hard to save. And it may be if you let things get so far with your spending habits that you really struggle to put money away. So honestly, that's a good lesson. It's good to start early, you know.
Well, and what was interesting is I started before I got my first paycheck, right? So when it came in, that was no big deal. That's just how I lived. So I think that it may have been harder down the line based on what I was getting. So what if you get it and then people, you know, they buy a place or they rent a place, and then they also get a car that takes off a certain amount per month, and so their bills, they run up, things they buy based on monthly payment. Then they don't have it left when the time comes.
Right.
And so if you do it the other way around ahead of time and not run up those bills, you know, that's why a lot of people just pay cash for things. They don't want to have a monthly payment, because what people who get you in debt or know that if you buy things, that they just tell you how much the monthly amount is, then you won't freak out about the whole amount. And you also won't be able to tell so much if it's a good deal. But so they say based on your income, this certain percentage you could pay out. And so they rent things and buy things on credit and things like that. So when you do that, you max out your income. Instead of getting to the point where starting out low, pay cash, get a cheaper car, pay cash for it, and then work your way up to another car for cash. You know what I mean? So that you work your way up. So I think that our whole society has changed to just a debt-ridden society.
And that's one of the reasons why our society is so stressed financially, and why more money seems so appealing, because it just seems like that would take care of the problem, right?
Yeah, it seems like that, but that was before that. You know, the economic world shifted, and you can become quickly rich as a young person in like a tech company, or, you know, we saw that in the Super Bowl commercials. A lot of those startup companies became big real fast. And so you could basically be a well-paid professional and play golf and wear nice clothes, wear, you know, all that kind of stuff, a nice car, all that kind of stuff, but still just have so much debt. And that is why I'm telling you, we see thousands of people, and the people that are truly wealthy are not the people you think they are, because they just drive a normal truck or a car. And we have a lot of cattle ranchers, and we have a lot of people with land, and it is amazing how much money they have. And they act like normal people. We hang out with them, they're normal, they're just normal. And we pay for our own food when we're with them, right? Because we go to Red Robin as well. When they try to pay for our food, I'm like, hey, like seriously, I can go to Red Robin. I do it all the time. But if you're going to take me to the mansion and you invite me, okay, you can pay for that. But part of it is they just act like normal people. But when you use money to feel good about yourself, and you need it for your self-esteem, and that's all one of the few coping skills you have, then it's how you dress, how you look. You're showing that you have money, and that's pretty expensive. And that's where you can tell with the younger group, and they want to look affluent, okay, even though they're not affluent yet, and work their way. They want to live the life their parents lived, even though they haven't worked their way up yet, and they haven't really been taught to not do that, because their parents buy them brand new cars, which they're starting out in their dream car just immediately. And so those are some things to think about. But when you do that and you give them all that stuff, you're actually setting your child up to not be as happy, because those are not the things that bring happiness. By building relationships, and that's the great thing about growing up in a big family, is I learned the importance of relationships, and we all learn the importance of relationships, and how those just bring you so much just love and contentment, much more than any money. And so if you have people around you, it doesn't have to be family, it can be just people at church or friends or neighborhood. The more relationships you have around you, the more value to your life goes up. And so if you tend to live by yourself somewhere and you don't have any relationships, then maybe the money is the thing to get you out so you can meet people and stuff. But the real key is you need relationships. Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's one of the keys to happiness and even contentment, where I'm much more at ease with where I am and what I have. And so it behooves us, it's really important for us to nurture relationships. We get so caught up in our work, for one thing.
Yeah.
And a lot of that has to do with finances, right? We're just trying to make money, more money, more money, more money. And so when that happens, often we let people, relationships, friendships go by the wayside, right? And so we find ourselves often with nobody around. We look around and say, where did I go? They're not around anymore.
Yeah.
Because we really haven't nurtured the relationship. And so this is something that you and I have talked about lately. We're really feeling a need to get back into some of the relationships that we had nurtured before. We want to start nurturing those relationships because they are so important to our happiness.
And I think that what happened, even with us, though we have been having, because we're essential workers, we've been out the whole time. But, you still, it's gotten quarantining, everybody's sheltering in. There's lots of people we haven't seen, and you feel it. I mean, it took us a while, but there's a point where we're like, oh my gosh, we just need to go see people.
Right.
We need to go do something and with people and call our friends. And so we really encourage you, and if you can't get out because you're afraid, then Zoom or call.
And nurturing relationships and really wanting to get with our friends. And so we actually just stopped by the house of some friends of ours, just hoping they'd be free. And
they were outside.
They were outside doing some work and additions to the house and all that. And so we just enjoyed some time with them.
Yeah.
And, so we know that COVID makes it all harder to do sometimes.
Yes.
But then today, even as we were on our way to the studio, we called some friends and said, "Hey, are you guys tied up this afternoon, or we thought we might just stop by and say hi and spend some time?" And
the important reason to do that, is to reach out, whether you physically go see them or not. Reach out, because what happens to you, even to us, even though we have kept working, is that the less you reach out, the less you reach out. Okay, that's why I hate the whole social distancing thing. We need you not to social distance. You want to physically distance yourself, that's great, okay? If you're afraid, that's fine. Or if, the virus is it's going crazy where you are, okay, but don't socially distance. Don't socially distance. Call up people, Zoom, do anything you can to visit with people, because what happens with your psyche is the less you do that, the less it wants to do that. And just energy-wise, the less you move, the less you want to move. So if you don't get outside and do stuff, no matter what it is, go out in your yard, go for a walk, just get in your car, go for a drive, the less that you do that, the less your body wants to move.
Yeah, you just kind of want to just stay still, sit around, and you're not motivated to get out and really do things.
Now, we want to give you some tips how to actually, basically, simply become happier. So we have 4 tips we want to give you. The first one is train your brain to be more positive, because 2 shows back, we did talk more about things to make you happier, and we want to let you know what those are. So I'm just going to tell you what they are. Train your brain to be more positive. How do you do that? Expressing gratitude, giving sincere thanks to others, and of course we also talked about journaling, and some people call that a gratitude journal. We actually just say journal, but when you're journaling, write things down that make you feel good or that you're grateful for. So a gratitude journal. And then count your blessings. That means you can write down or say to yourself anything good that came to you. Those were blessings. And then if you can, write a letter to someone thanking them, or an email. We just suggest that right now. More tips when we get back. So Do you want to do the next? I know you had tips, and I don't want to because we only got like 5 minutes to get those done.
Well, I know we may not want to do all of them.
I know there's one you don't want to do, and it's okay. It's just. But
Okay.
I think that it's important that we. I know because you're talking about you don't like the genetics, saying that people
But that's
have
not-
a genetic
Yeah,
set
that's
point,
not in the tips though.
a happiness set point. You hate that. You hate that.
Well, yeah, because I don't believe it's true.
You don't believe it's true that they have a happiness set point. What do you call it? What would you call it?
I would relate it more to personality
Mhm.
and what you were learned skills that you grew up knowing and that kind of thing. Things that our parents encouraged us to do and all that. My parents encouraged me artistically, and so I got a lot of joy out of art. They encouraged me to read because they knew it was a good way to develop my intelligence, and so I enjoyed reading and all that kind of thing. So.
Zig Ziglar put a meme up. I should put that up. I'll have to put that up later. And it's with the who's the guy that did the male model comedy, the comedian? Oh.
Yeah, I can't think of that. I remember seeing that meme, and I can't think of the
Okay,
guy.
open up. But basically, it said that happy people have more books and a lot of books and a smaller television.
Right.
And
Yeah.
unhappy people have no books and bigger TV. So wealthy people, he's also done another one because I was thinking of another one he has, that wealthy people have a big library and small TVs, and poor people have hardly any books and giant TVs.
I know.
I know, that is still, yeah, that he does both of those. And I think that's funny because if you zone out in front of the TV, and especially now, in this world today, I mean, even finding a really good show is hard. More or less the news and all this stuff every time you turn on the show, but
Right.
even just a real quality show.
It's difficult. It's
Yeah.
very hard to find.
Now, we enjoy Person of Interest and, different ones, but it's still very hard to find. And so if you are just zoning out in front of a screen, so there are kids, they don't do that. They don't want to watch TV or anything, so they play their games.
Yeah.
But still, someone else created the game, and it's someone else's kind of agenda. I would love them to create a game. And I try to get them to write, do their own YouTube stuff, writing scripts and putting together things like that. These kids that are so gifted get caught up in these games when they have so many gifts. These are the most gifted kids in the world to me. And so if they didn't have the video games, they would be creating some inventions or incredible things. But their happiness is lower in general than the kids we have that get out and do sports or get outside and work on the farm or anything like that outside away from electronics. The kids who are caught up in the electronics are not as happy by any means.
They aren't. They're much more distant. They're very much more secluded in relationships and all that kind of thing. They don't interact. They're socially awkward, and that often is the way it is.
So do you think that when we talk about that, do you think that it is, because you don't like the idea of a genetic happiness set point.
No, I don't think.
And I don't think the statistic, I don't think the research, the number that they choose, right, that they just, where do they get that it makes you 40% or 50%
I have no
genetics?
idea. They didn't mention their sources. Okay.
But do you think that it's possible that some of it, 10%?
Maybe.
Welcome back. We want you to have the tips for happiness that we want to give you. We talked about training your brain to be more positive.
Right.
There's some simple things that you can do. Our brains are wired to do things very simply for happiness. And a lot of those things are just with our vision, looking at beautiful colors, seeing things that are, in order. It's kind of strange how that goes. The colors definitely make us feel better. And then really all our senses, the smells, things that make us, feel good just by smell.
Right.
And often those are fruits, any kind of fruit, like lemon, orange. Oh, and with the holidays, people pumpkin spice. I mean, you know, whatever smell it is for you, you know what that smell is, right? But then there's also touch. We have a family member that got some incredible sheets, some bed sheets she ordered, and she keeps going on and on and on about them, how wonderful they are. And we're like, okay, maybe we need to get those, because just the touch, the tactile, and that's where pets are very soothing.
Yes.
Because you can pet them and they're soft, and that's the difference between like a pet and a snake, a rabbit or a cat or a dog versus a reptile, right? Okay, you can't really pet. I'm just saying. I know you're a guy.
I'm laughing. Okay. Well, and which brings out to me the importance of the Power of Now. Eckhart Tolle wrote The Power of Now,
Yes.
and it really it's a book about stress and how to reduce our stress. And one of the ways we do that is by beginning to heighten our awareness of what's around us, right, at any given time. And so that can be color, like you said, it can be textures that we feel, it can be something that, it can be a bird. We've mentioned before the cardinals in our neighborhood that we love seeing. It just makes us happy to see those cardinals out there and to hear their song.
Yeah, and that's beauty and sound.
Right.
And hearing the waterfall on our pool, you know, and where we live on the lake, a lot of those sounds. It's still smell, sight, okay, and touch and things like that. So yes, your senses. So that's a really easy thing to do to feel better. Nurturing your relationships. This is one of the ones we want to talk about. Nurturing and enjoying your relationships. So I said, you know, write a letter or send them an email or call them. Tell them how thankful you are for them. I do that a lot with my parents. I really do. Not as much with my siblings, but I definitely do it a lot with my parents. They're in the 80s, and you know, I email my dad every day. Sometimes throughout the day, he'll email me, "Oh, I just had some ice cream, yummy." You know, he'll just tell me, and so you know, and I'll just thank him casually a lot for things and just how grateful I am. A lot of, you know, I definitely, in light of the years, have gotten to the point where I see that happy. I just am generally happy, and so are they, so are my parents, and that really helps me.
Right.
And I'm thankful that they passed that on to me, and my grandmother was all very happy. And so being around positive people, that's where relationships can help you, being around positive people, but also reaching out to help them feel better. So a letter, a text, making a conscious effort to stay connected, because you can just, especially during this quarantine time, you can just forget to call them and spend time with them. And invest in quality time. Time, that's what we talked about. Happiness, you can trade money for time to get happy. Okay?
Right.
And time with them, if you have to fly to them, if you have to send them stuff, but really spending time.
Yeah, and when it says quality time, that's different from just from other kinds of times when we might be together. Quality time usually involves some kind of personal, internal investment in the situation with people. And when I talk to guys about this, I meet with guys mostly, and I talk to them about the importance of eye contact, physical contact, focused attention. Those are the elements of quality time. And,
meaning not sitting in front of TV together. Yes, you can do that.
Or being on your phone while you're trying to have a conversation
Yeah.
with somebody. That's, you know, that never works.
So another thing is often sincere compliments to them. Really be positive affirmations. Affirm them a lot. Seeking out on your own happier people. Okay, it's not that people are struggling, yes, but you also want to find happy people more positive to be around, because they bring your mood up, which enables you to be better for others. So, and then take delight in the good fortune of others. Take delight in that. I know that people have said, you know, all my family members are earning money. How do you feel about that? And I'm like, I am so thankful and grateful.
Right.
So thankful and grateful. And when good things happen to people, be grateful. Be excited for them. Tell them, because you want them to do it for you too. And that way everyone gets better. So the other thing for being happy is live in the moment this week and savor life's pleasures. Just enjoy people, enjoy animals, enjoy the things around you. Reach out and help everyone else get better too.
Right.
And then next week we'll see you here, and we're going to talk more about happiness. And we're going to have some cute little holiday gnomes and things to tell you to do to make your Christmas and Thanksgiving and Halloween even better. Take good care. Have a great week.
Bye, everyone.
We didn't bring the gnomes this week.
No, we will bring him next week. Thank you for everyone
Thank
who
you.
joined us today. We appreciate you, and really glad that you were with us today.
And
I hope
I'm
it was helpful.
so sorry about the phone. So good to see Julie on there. All right, let me finish.